Okay, got it. All right, let me just put this in a presentation mode. A very small introduction. Uh, let
न
me.
हि ज्ञानेन सदृशम् पवित्रमिह विद्यते तत्स्वयं योगसंसिद्धः कालेनात्मनि विन्दति.
So, what this essentially says, nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramiha vidyate, tatsvayam yoga sansiddha kalenatmani vindati. It just says that in this world there is nothing more purifying than the divine knowledge. One who has attained purity of mind through prolonged practice of yoga. Yoga, in this sense, is more of a self discipline, receives such knowledge within the heart in due course of time. So, here's the agenda for today's seminar. I'll be going through each of these topics and sharing my thoughts. Uh, as you have some questions, as questions pop up, please put it on the chat window. You will also have some time slots where you can ask questions. In between topics, I will give a little break to address some of the questions. And at the end of the session, also, you will have plenty of time to ask questions. Again, the purpose of this seminar uh, uh, is to generate an awareness of astrology and its significance in our lives, in our daily lives. Okay. I know that most of you have interacted with me one on one in different capacity. Um, but there could be questions lingering about the subject, about how you should approach it, etc. My hope is that after this seminar, there will be two things that those are takeaways from my side to to all of you. The first takeaway is that you are yourself a bit knowledgeable about what this subject is about and what is its significance in our life. Okay, that is number one. Number two, you will also be educated enough that if you're consulting an astrologer, you will know what questions you should ask and why you should ask them. Okay, and when the astrologer says something, you'll be knowledgeable enough to understand why the astrologer is telling what whatever reading he or she does. Okay, those are the two main goals of this seminar, and I hope it's useful and useful takeaways for you. So the first item is actually an invocation prayer that we always do for any kind of a class of this sort. Just a general introduction followed by that, and then a theory, right? The fundamentals or the foundations of astrology, also known as Jyotisham in Sanskrit. Okay, what is the foundational concepts that needs to be very clear in our minds in a very brief way. Then, what exactly is Vedic astrology? What is this subject about? We'll delve into some details, and then I'll talk a little bit about the basic astronomy. You don't have to be an astronomer to be an astrologer. However, if you understand some basics of astrology, I think that would be very, very helpful. And also, you, it will allow you to actually contextualize whatever we are studying here at this point of time. Okay. um, Let me, I think one of the participant is just trying to join. Let me just make sure that they're able to join. Okay. All right. So, and then after that we will I'll get into exactly what is a horoscope, give you an exposure of what is a horoscope, what are the components of a horoscope, when we do the reading, what are the things that I'll try to make it as simple as possible for somebody who has some exposure to Jyotisham. That's fine, to astrology. And I'm assuming that many of you don't have, from a reading perspective, the exposure to astrology. So I'll give you those basic building blocks or components of the horoscope and very simple techniques to analyze. Okay. How do we analyze this? And in this process, we can simply take a horoscope at random, and I can show you some of the things that you need to put together in order to even look at a horoscope. Then, of course, very important, the do's and don'ts of astrology, and we'll conclude with a closing prayer. So, this is the invocation prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karvavahe, Tejasvinavadi Tamastuma Vidhishavahaihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This is a very important invocation prayer. The main signification as well as the meaning I have written down here. Essentially, it says that when you and I are interacting together on this subject, let this really nourish our minds, okay, and enlighten us. That should be the main objective of the session. And let the question and answers also be very productive in nature, and let there not be any negativity. Okay, that is a very important invocation prayer. Just a very brief introduction. My name is Jyotish Kasi. I embarked into the learning of Jyotisham or Vedic astrology at Arshavidya Gurukulam, Salisbury, founded by Swami Dayananda Saraswati. I was going there earlier for other scriptural readings on Veda, and in one of the sessions, they spoke about Jyotisham or astrology as an anga of Veda or a limb of Veda. Uh, uh, Jyotisham is actually considered as an eye of Veda. So that's where my learning actually triggered, and I did a formal training at Arshavidya Gurukulam and started practicing Jyotisham about astrology about 15 years ago. And it's been a very, very productive journey for me, interacting with various people in the community. I have now formally, I also have a website. I can give you a very, very quick glance of that. Um, I'm not, I may have to probably share that. So let me just quickly share that. Here you go. So this is my website where you have, it's a very simple website where I just give an overview about myself, and what are the things and services that I offer in astrology, and also about, there is some information about the seminar. And then there are some very quick links about, people have been asking about COVID, all those things. This is something I published early March of this year. When will COVID end? Yeah, the question is very simple. If you go to my published document in early March, essentially, if you can go through this in detail, but essentially there will be two phases of this moving out of a very challenging time for us. Phase one actually already began on April 22nd. It started tapered down, and then the phase two will begin September 20th, is what, end of September. So that will be the order of recovery from this. In fact, I expect that after the end of September, it will start tapering down worldwide. That's about COVID. Okay, and let me just go there. And but more important question is, how will COVID affect me? Right? You should go and probably read that also. And in that, I have very clearly stated, what are the things that you need to consider. When these macro events or the big events, how do they affect you? these kind of events are not generally harmful to everybody. Yes, it causes a lot of distress, but there is a lot of very productive outcome also. How it affects individually is depends upon your individual horoscope. Okay, so that's a brief overview of my website here, and let me just get back to our topics. Okay, back to topics. So so let's get into the theory of karma, right? See, there is something very foundational about astrology or Jyotisham, right? And that foundation is, there's one more person actually joining. Sorry to interrupt, but I think I may have to probably log the meeting now to avoid further. Okay. So the foundation, let me explain to you the foundation of astrology or Jyotisham, right? The very foundation of astrology or Jyotisham is based on a fundamental theory which is very, very common among all of us, right? What we seek is in our lives is a single, if I say in a very single way, right? If I have to ask a question, what is the one thing, right, that you seek in life? I'm sure the answer will be unanimous in telling that what you seek is a happiness, right? But there is a caveat to this happiness. The happiness, you don't want this happiness to end. So what you're seeking is an endless happiness, right? So our scriptures do say that there is a state of mind where you can achieve or accomplish this unending state of happiness. Okay, and that state is what is referred to as moksha, and we all chase that state in our lives through various means. Okay, but our experience is that one life is not enough sometimes to accomplish or come to that state of mind. So in order to do that, you take another birth and you continue the journey from where you left. Okay, so the theory of karma, which is basically fundamental, is based on this particular concept. Okay, so in order to do that, you perform various karmas or actions, right, which gets accumulated in various janmas or births, right? And that accumulation of karma is what we refer to as sanchita karma. Okay, these are the categories of karma, right? Sanchita karma. Um, from an astrology perspective, what is very important is the second classification, that is prarabdha karma. Because when you're coming into this life, taking birth into this life, right, you're taking a portion of that sanchita karma and coming to this life. And that portion is what we refer to as prarabdha karma. Okay, prarabdha karma is, yeah, it has actually essentially three elements in it, but the most important element of prarabdha karma is the experiences in your life, what we call as bhogaha. Okay, that's a very important thing, because when an astrologer reads your horoscope, what the astrologer is actually doing is reading the prarabdha karma of your horoscope. Okay, so which is basically your life experiences. And then you have agami karma. Agami karmas are the karmas that you're performing in this janma. You came with prarabdha karma, you're also performing agami karmas, and those agami karmas hopefully are towards that journey of unending happiness. So where the reading of prarabdha helps you is tells you your life experiences and how you should make the right decisions to get to the agami, to the unending goal of your happiness. Okay, so those are very important classifications of karmas, including kriyamana karma, which which you perform in your daily life. Okay, which includes some rituals too. but most important thing is this prarabdha karma. So the foundationally, the theory of karma is what gives that essential needed guidance for you in astrology. And it is very important to understand that uh, karma is fundamental to this study. Okay, then you have free will and destiny, right? uh, People, you one may say that, hey, if everything is driven by karma and destiny, what should I be doing? But then I've already spoken to you about agami karma, right? So what the sages have told is, this is a very relevant actually shloka here: ahara nidra bhaya maithunam cha samana metva shubhirna shubhirnam बुद्धिर्हि तेषम अधिको वेशसो बुद्धिर्हिना पशुभ्य समानः. What it essentially says is that ahara nidra bhaya. Ahara means the feel of hunger. Nidra is sleep. Bhaya, which is actually a sense of fear, and Maithuna, the ability to reproduce. These four qualities are same among humans and animals or any other living creature, right? So what makes a human different is actually buddhirna, which is intellect, right? So uh, you should view life as a two-sided coin. Okay, on one side of the coin is the trend of destiny. On the other side of the coin is your free will and intellect. So if you look at it like a spectrum, right? On the far left side, you may have people telling that everything is driven by destiny. I don't want to do anything. My actions don't hold anything. On the other side of the spectrum, people say that everything is driven by my intellect and free will. Destiny is nothing. But our experiences tell that both the ends of the spectrums are really of people with really ordinary minds, not thinking much, right? So, for an intelligent life, try to come to the middle of the spectrum. Know the trends of your destiny, and at the same time, make use of your intellect to make the right decisions at the right time. That is where actually astrology comes very, very handy as a tool for positive counseling. For example, astrology may tell you, if I look at a chart, right, I can tell that this is an excellent horoscope for education. By the way, this horoscope also includes that this person will have a lot of inclination towards performing arts. Let's put it that way. So, and if that child is, in that teenage or whatever, or even let's say 10 or 12, right, as a parent, as a guardian, as somebody near and dear to that child, you have the ability to make the right decision to steer that person in the right direction. And at the same time, when you are seeing those kind of interests in that child, right, you will be able to provide more facility to grow in that direction. So that is a thing that will give ultimately the happiness to that person, right? So that is how you combine the ability to make decisions with reading the trends of destiny. Okay, so that's where the free will and my also definition of an event in life is exactly where free will and destiny intersect, right? So as an astrologer, one can say that this is the right time for you to do a certain thing. For example, settling with a life partner, or freezing your retirement financials and things of that nature. And using your free will, you make the right decision, and an event occurs at that point of time. So, what is astrology? It's basically a scientific study of applications of languages of the heavenly bodies. Essentially, everything affects everything. That's our experience also, and that is also foundational to astrology. So, our sages have taken the nearest elements, big bodies of cosmos that reflects our karmas. Okay, and those I'll be talking about what they are. But essentially, that is what is astrology. It's a very deep super science. It's a combination of astronomy and a lot of mathematics. But as I said earlier, you don't have to be proficient in extreme astronomy or be a mathematician to know astrology, but you should know the fundamentals of them. And thanks to the computer these days, a lot of computations at least are done by computer. But still, I think the ultimate analysis of how it will transform into influencing somebody's life is, within your ability to do that. So, antiquity of Jyotisha, very briefly, as I mentioned, that you have Veda as the entire scriptural body, and you have various angas in it. Okay, there are six angas or limbs. Okay, Siksha, which is essentially about phonetics, Vyakarana is grammar, Nirukta is etymology, origin of words, Chandas is Chandra is how the meter, actually how you pronounce certain things, right? And Kalpa is about rituals or procedures, and Jyotisha as an anga, it's the eye of the Veda. So let's get into the basic astronomy that you need to know. The basic astronomy is from the celestial perspective. It's a geocentric. Whatever we do in astrology, Earth is the point of view. So when you look at the grahas, one of the grahas is not Earth. That's because that's the point of view. It's the center of the Earth and point of reference. Ecliptic, it's an imaginary circle formed by extending the infinite equatorial plane around the Earth. Zodiac, it's the imaginary band. It's about 9 degrees angular distance on either side of the ecliptic. So, from any point of the Earth, when you look at, it's you can imagine Earth, and then there is equator, and then you imagine a band around the equator, right? That's what is zodiac. Okay, constellation is actually that within that same band of 360 degrees, there are 27 divisions of zodiac. Okay, each division is 13 degrees and 20 minutes, which translates to the entire 360 degrees. And again, within the same band, you have 12 divisions of zodiac, each of 30 degrees. Okay, those are basic astronomy that you need to know. All right. And then you have the Earth. You are very familiar from your early days in schooling about latitudes and longitudes, right? And then you have a concept of ascendant. Okay. This is also very important to understand, but it is very simple. Uh, at any point of time from Earth, when you look at the eastern horizon at any time of the day or night, okay, that point which is rising, because the zodiac is circular around the Earth, right? The part of the zodiac that is rising, that is known as ascendant. Okay, for now, you just, if you can know that much, that's enough. Sunrise, everybody knows that it's the intersection of eastern horizon to the Earth's surface. Okay, look at ascendant and sunrise, somewhat similar, except for the fact that ascendant keeps rising every couple of hours because there are 12 different signs, and the ascendant will have one sign at a time. It's the eastern end of the horizon that's rising. That's what is ascendant. Okay, so let's get into what is exactly a horoscope. Okay, a horoscope essentially consists. Okay, hold on, give me 1 second. Again, there are essentially four elements in a horoscope. Okay, the four elements being, number one is rashis or signs. Most people are familiar. I'll also go through each of them. Okay, there are 12 signs of the zodiac that we use always in analyzing a horoscope. Okay, and then you have grahas or planets. Okay, the planets are in Sanskrit we call it as grahas because they are the largest bodies of cosmos, or rather the nearest bodies of cosmos, that reflect an individual's karmas. Okay, those bodies are nine in nature. There is no effective translation of those grahas to English. However, they are also known as planets. That's the nearest translation you get, to resonate those heavenly bodies. How we can call them is as planets in English. Okay, and then you have bhavas or houses. So when you look at a horoscope, it's the 360 degrees is represented in a horoscope, right? Those 360 degrees of zodiac is actually divided into 12 different houses. Okay, each house will have a particular signification, which I'll also talk about later, which helps you in actually interpreting the individual's horoscope. Those are known as bhavas or houses. And then you have nakshatras or constellations of the stars. Okay, there are 27 such constellations, and those 27 are also represented in the same band of the zodiac, okay, that I mentioned before. So let me briefly go through each of them so that you understand the fundamentals of each of them, because this is again foundational in looking at a horoscope. Okay. So let's come to Rashis, right? What are Rashis or signs, right? They are 12 in nature, okay, in number rather. Uh, the first one is Mesha. See, the first name that I've given is the Sanskrit name. The second one is the Western English name for it. So Mesha is nothing but Aries, and here I have also given you an element of what that sign denotes. Okay, each sign has an element in it. Okay, which are essentially four elements, which is fire, earth, air, and watery. Okay, those are the elements, basic nature of the rashis. You will see that they will repeat after every four rashis. Okay, first rashi is Aries. The second one is Taurus, which is known as Rishabha in Sanskrit. The third one is Mithuna, which is Gemini. The fourth one is Karaka, which is Cancer. The fifth one is Simha, Leo. The sixth one is Kanya or Virgo. The seventh one is Tula or Libra. And the eighth one is Vrishchika or Scorpio. And the ninth one is Dhanur, Sagittarius. The 10th is Makara, Capricorn. 11th is Kumbha, Aquarius. 12th is Meena or Pisces, right? So you notice here that this four nature, the four elements, right, they keep repeating after every fourth rashi. So if you look at 1, 5, and 9, right, they will have the same nature. Similarly, 2, 6, and 10, they're earthy in nature. The third rashi, which is Gemini 3, right, and 7 and 11, they are airy in nature. And 4, 8, and 12, they are watery in nature. So those are the natures of each rashi. Okay, so this is like the basics of rashis or signs. Now you come to grahas. Okay, the main grahas which we consider in Vedic astrology are nine of them. Okay, and those are Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. Okay. See, this super science of astrology was given to us as a lineage from a sage called Sage Parashara, which you all might be knowing, right? So he is the one who is given this knowledge in a very traditional way, and that is how it has come to us. Okay. So according to him, these are the nine grahas that are closest, or rather not closest, but basically they closely reflect the karmas in a horoscope. Okay. So when you look at these nine grahas, they are made some basic fundamental classifications. Okay, as malefics and benefics. Whatever you're seeing in red, or known as the malefic grahas, which essentially reflect karmas. It doesn't mean that they are malefic in nature. Okay, it is the karmas that are reflected, which can be malefic in nature. So one needs to study that in a very contextual way. The sun is regarded as a kruda graha. It is not a malefic, actually, pure malefic, or it's not a benefic, but it is a little bit, it appears to be crude in nature, but the it is really the most royal, or also among planets. And as you and I know, that sun, without sun, the we ourselves may not exist. So that's a very, very important graha, and so is moon. So we will talk about some of those significations of each of these grahas also, which is very, very important to understand. The other thing to understand is these nine grahas are also offered a kind of a lordship. Okay, so there are 12 signs. However, there are nine grahas, and each of the graha is offered some kind of a lordship. Among the nine, only the seven tangible ones, right, are offered the lordships. So if you look at the grahas and planets, you have the sun, you have the moon, you have Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn, right? These are the seven grahas which you can see with your eyes also, and they are tangible, tangible to us from Earth. Then there are two other grahas, okay, who have been given the status of grahas, that is Rahu and Ketu. Okay, Rahu and Ketu are nothing but the northern and southern nodes, or from the earth, the intersection point. It's now we are coming to a little bit of an astronomy, but it is basically the intersection point of the plane of moon's a revolution around the earth, as well as earth's revolution around the sun. Okay, so those are the two nodes, Rahu and Ketu, but they have been given the status of grahas. Okay, however, they do not have any kind of a lordship. Okay, let's talk about lordship. The lordship of each Rashi is given here. For example, Leo, the lord of Leo is Sun, the lord of Cancer is Moon, the lord of Aries and Scorpio is Mars, lord of Gemini and Virgo is Mercury, lord of Sagittarius and Pisces is Jupiter, lord of Taurus and Libra is Venus, lord of Capricorn and Aquarius is Saturn. Okay, so these lordships are important to understand, because this is what makes uh, you know each horoscope very different. Okay, so in Vedic astrology, it's a little bit more macro in nature. Sorry, a little bit more micro in nature. Okay, uh, because as you know, that if you have a band of the zodiac around the sun, around the earth, you know every couple of hours, you will know that the zodiac shifts from any point of view on the earth. So that is why if you look at the eastern horizon, and if you see the rising zodiac, every 2 hours it changes. Okay, and whatever is the rising zodiac in the eastern horizon becomes a central part of your horoscope, which we refer to as ascendant. And as the ascendant changes in a horoscope, the entire horoscope can change, and the nature of the karmas can change. It's very important to understand that, right? And then the role of each of these grahas, whether they are malefics or benefics, they can functionally change between a horoscope, one horoscope and other horoscope. For example, by nature, let's say Jupiter, by nature it's a benefic, But in certain horoscope, functionally it could become a malefic. So that's another important aspect to understand, right? And then you have certain groupings among these grahas. There is a certain group. You're seeing two groups here. You consider them as a little gang of themselves, right? So group one is not very friendly to group two, but within group one each graha is very friendly to each other, right? So sun, moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Ketu, they are supposed to be friendly to each other, right? For example, if sun is in Cancer, right? You know that the lord of Cancer is Moon, right? So Sun is actually in a very friendly house, you can say. Okay, a friendly sign rather, you can say. Similarly, if Mars is in Leo, you can consider that as a friendly, or Jupiter is in Scorpio, right? Then you can say that yes, Jupiter, if Jupiter is Scorpio in a horoscope, Aries and Scorpio is owned by Mars, and Mars and Jupiter are friends. They are in a good house, you can say. Similarly, group 2, Mercury, they are very friendly to each other. This is a very broad classification. There are further sub classifications when you get into the detail of the study. But if you take this whole thing as a snapshot, right? There are signs, and now there are grahas, or planets, right? These are two basic building blocks for you to even look at any kind of a horoscope, right? Now you have, uh, I would say, going to a little bit more detail about what each of these planets are. I think it is important to understand, because end of the day, you need to know why are they significant, each of them, right? So what you're seeing here is significations of each graha. Okay, because this is where the formation of each graha comes into play, and your interpretation of what kind of karmas they are representing in that particular horoscope. For example, when you take sun, I've listed very few significations. There are actually many more significations here of sun. Uh, some of the main significations are ego, soul, father, royalty, government, status, bones, vitality, healing. Similarly, moon, it's mind, emotion, imagination, charisma, mother, water, salt, blood, lungs. These are all the significations of moon. Mars is initiative, brothers, enforcement, military, weapons, fine, explosives. Then you have Mercury, intellect, friends, commerce, public speaking, diplomacy, skin, speech, etc. Jupiter, wisdom, teachers, knowledge, progeny, righteousness, liver, fat, sweet. So many other significations are also there. Venus is sensuality, beauty, sophistication, creativity, spouse, sexuality. Those are all representations of Venus. Saturn, you have lethargy, perseverance, self, law, nervous system, longevity, death. Then you have Rahu, ambition, dissidence, rebelliousness, deviance. And you have Ketu, renunciation, occult, rituals, fanatism, etc. So, as you can see, that while the grahas have been classified as malefics or benefics, the significations can be very different. The significations are, it can be both positive as well as negative depending upon the particular horoscope. Okay, for instance, if you take Mars, right? Mars is one of the significations is enforcement, right? Or and weapons and explosives, right? You know that these elements can be used in a very positive way in life, and also a negative way in life, right? Similarly, Mercury as well as Jupiter, or Venus for that matter. Saturn is considered as malefic, but at the same time it has got some very very positive significations like self discipline, etc., right, which can be phenomenally useful, um, depending upon how it is placed in the horoscope. So this is a 101 of the signs as well as the grahas. Okay. Now let's come to the third building block, which is essentially the houses in a horoscope. The houses are also known as bhava. Okay. Basically, what it is that there are 12 houses when you look at a horoscope. By the way, the drawing of the horoscope itself, right? There are different ways in Vedic astrology you draw. There is a northern way of drawing. North in the North India, there is a way of drawing. In the South India, there is another way of drawing. In the East India, there is another way of drawing. But essentially, we can go with one for this particular session. But I want to emphasize that there is zero difference between all of them. Okay. The representation is different, but from the point of view of interpretation of what I am telling, there is absolutely no difference. Okay. So this is a North Indian way of doing. This is one of the ways you can very logically derive, but all representations are the same. Now, in this what you're looking at is a body of a horoscope. Okay. uh, this particular first one these are divisions. The 12 divisions in the horoscope that you're seeing are known as bhavas or houses. Okay. The first division is what we call as lagna, or it is also referred to as ascendant in English. Okay. The ascendant is what I was talking to you earlier. That's a house number 1. Okay. And then you go anti-clockwise. The second house is known as dhana, and which is essentially, I've given the significations of each of these houses on the right side. Just like you had signification of the grahas, now you have signification of the houses. The first house signifies self, ego, physic, head, vitality, etc. Again, these are all very limited right now, what I've given here. There are a lot more significations of each house. Remember that your entire aspect of life is covered by this horoscope, which means each house has a lot of significations in number. Okay. But these are some of the main ones that I've given here. The second one is about speech, earned wealth, family, food. When I say family, it's like the blood relations. Okay. Food, eyes, these are the second. Then the third is courage, siblings, short trips, expression, ear, arms, etc. The fourth is about mother, about property, heart, lungs, happiness, education. Fifth is about progeny, which is essentially children, right? And then aptitude, abdomen, intellect, elevation. Sixth house is the house of illness, obstacles, litigation, enemies, aunt, etc. And then the seventh house is the house of partnership, about spouse, genital areas, spinal cord, sexuality. Those are all represented in seventh house. Eighth house is about longevity, defeat, loss of possession, death, occult studies. Those are all eighth house. Ninth house is father, teacher, virtue, tradition, and fortune. One of the main, significations of this particular house. Then 10th house is all about career, okay, profession, work, authority, fame, and then you have your ties. And then the 11th house, labha, is about gains, easy money, desires, titles, dependence, etc. And then you have 12th house, which is basically confinement, loss, foreign trips, etc. So these are some of, again, the broader significations of each house. So now you see that you have, what the signs are, what the grahas are, what the houses are, and the basics of the significations of the grahas as well as the houses, right? And last, but yeah, okay. So these, and then you have actually the nakshatras, which I have not listed here, but I had already spoken to you about that, because those nakshatras are also very important. There are 27 nakshatras which come into play. So, and each nakshatra also has its own significations. So when you study the horoscope, you start putting all of these things together when you come out with a statement of a particular karma. Okay. So how do you exactly put these things together and analyze in a horoscope? How exactly do you do that? Right. So if you want to be do a really an honest job of doing, right, you have to be thorough in your studies. Okay. And there is a method to do that. It's a very scientific method, and if you learn it properly, one can become a very effective astrologer. Okay. The important thing in analysis is to put various layers of analysis in a particular horoscope, knowing what you know, right? So those, at least at the base level, there are 7 layers of analysis. The first layer is known as Lagna Vichara. Okay, Vichara translates to analysis in English. Okay, Vichara again is a Sanskrit terminology, means something more deeper than analysis, but that's the closest word I could come across in English that translates to it, right? So when you analyze Lagna, right, you really know the basic nature of a person, because when you look at Lagna or ascendant, right here, what I said, right, you can see that the one of the signification is the self, ego, physic, body, vitality, all those things are there. But this particular house gives you a very decent picture of who the person is. Okay, so there is a way to analyze that particular house, and that is a step, a very important step in the analysis. Okay, and then once you analyze the lagna and once you know what's the root of that person, right, what is the real nature of that person, then you get into bhava vichara. Bhava vichara is essentially again analyzing each of these house. Okay, what is the house which is reflecting the best karmas in this person? So when you look at this horoscope, you can know by the formation and various other aspects of the grahas in different houses, you will know where the horoscope is really swinging towards. Is it swinging towards just the self, that is too much focus of grahas on the first house, or is it say, swinging towards the family, or is it swinging towards you know the fourth house significations, or is this person a completely a career oriented person, or a very lucky person, and things of that nature, or is he extremely devoted to his spouse and partnership, those kind of things, right? Where is the horoscope actually leaning towards? You understand that by doing the bhava vichara. Okay, and then there is something called yoga vichara. We have not spoken about that. Essentially, a yoga is a combination of grahas in certain areas in a horoscope, so which can make a very powerful reflection of karmas. Okay, so those are very very important to analyze, so that you can make the right derivation of what those karmas are. And then you have something called amsa vichara. Amsa vichara is divisional analysis. I'll tell you in a very simple way what it is. Right, when you look at a horoscope, each of this house, that it is 30 degrees, right? When you look at all the 12 houses, 12 times 30, it's 360 degrees, right? However, what our sages have done is that, you know they consider 30 as quite a broad assertion of what it is. Although it is at a micro level, still it was broad for them. So in order to make it more accurate, what they've done is they divided each of these house into different kinds of degrees. Okay, for example, there is something called a 9 degree division. That is, this particular 30 degrees of each house have been divided into 9 portions. So when you divide 30 degrees into 9 portions, you'll get each portion with 3 degrees and 20 minutes, right? That is what we refer to as a navamsh or navamsha or the ninth division of a house. So then you do a micro analysis. Okay, at the house level, this is what it says, but what does it say at the particular ninth degree level? So you do a micro analysis of that to become more accurate, right? That is what is amsa vichara about. Then you have dasha vichara. Okay, so dasha analysis. So in the entire analysis of a horoscope, right, there are two basic elements of analysis. The first element of analysis is a static analysis. Okay, when you say static analysis, static is nothing but what is actually the boundaries of a horoscope. That's what is a static analysis. As I said earlier, you are born with a prarabdha, right? That particular prarabdha doesn't change. Okay, so you have the trends of those destiny laid out already like a mat, right? That is the static portion. Okay, however, in the dynamic portion, what you're studying is when are each of those karmas going to fructify in your life. For example, when you lay the entire horoscope, I can say that this horoscope is blessed with a lot of education, for example, right? But that is a static portion of the analysis. However, on the dynamic side, one needs to ask, when will those karmas fructify? You know, so for example, if those karmas fructify much later in your life, when you're in your 50s or 60s, I think it's of very little use education during that time rather than it fructifying early in life. you know so that is how you do the dynamic analysis. Okay, and then that is what is called dasha vichara. Now dasha vichara is essentially an analysis of what is the planet or graha that is playing a dominant role in life at that particular time. Okay, I spoke to you, there are 9 grahas, right? So our there are entire lifespan, there are segments of our lifespan which is dominated by one or more grahas. Okay, but there will be one graha which will playing the main role in life during that part of your life. One needs to know what that graha is. One needs to know what are the karmas those grahas are reflecting, right? So those karmas will start fructifying in that part of your life. Okay, so if you lay down your entire life, there is one of the dasha systems. There are different dasha systems. One of the dasha systems gives you a lifespan of 120 years, and each of the graha is given a certain time period. They are not equally distributed. Okay, for example, moon has 10 years, sun has 6 years, mercury has 16 years, right? 17 years, and Jupiter has 16 years. Similarly, the other grahas, right? They have different time periods. Venus has 20 years. So, depending upon which graha is playing a major role, you will analyze that part of that and then correlate to how it is placed in the horoscope based on your earlier static analysis of Lagna Vichara, Bhava Vichara, Yoga, and Amsa. That's what is Dasha Vichara. And then Gochara is about transits. Okay, so what is currently the transit, that is, the planets, everything is moving in cosmos, right? So if you just take a snapshot of what it is today, how it is affecting what it was during the time that you were born. So that analysis is known as transits, Gochara Vichara. And then you have the Nakshatra Vichara. As I mentioned, there are the constellation, the 27 constellations, how they affect each of them, that needs to be analyzed also. Now, the important aspect of me laying down the 7 vicharas is that whenever you come up with a statement, right, about a horoscope, you have to make sure, as an astrologer, one has to make sure that all these seven are telling the same or similar, making same or similar statement for you to come up with a statement. Okay, if somebody comes with a question, hey, I am looking for a job and will I get a job? Okay. And when will I get a job? Simple question, right? So you have to do all these seven vicharas before answering the question. Okay. That is very, very important. Because if you just on the surface, if you look at something, horoscope and say that, yeah, you will get the job in this and that time, it may or may not come fructify. And certainly if you do that consistently on an average, it will not. Okay. So you have to do this proper analysis, and if all of them are telling the same thing, then you can tell with great degree of confidence that certain event will occur at certain time. Okay. So this is the power of analysis as well as the whole horoscope reading. Okay. So all right. So now that we have um, learned the theory, I would say, or the basics of horoscope reading, what is astrology, what are the building blocks of reading a horoscope, how can we bring them together, what are the significations of various things. Let's do one thing. Let's go to a horoscope and try to just read it, from whatever we learned so far. What we are seeing here is just I just took a snapshot of this morning's horoscope. This is a snapshot of how the sky was looking at 5 a.m. Our time here. From at the sky, when you look at it, these are the combinations of various grahas. Okay. So when I took this snapshot, the combination was that the ascendant, you know the rising sign was the numbers that you're seeing, or the number of the signs. Okay. So the rising sign was sign number 4, which is essentially Cancer. Okay. But also, the fundamental thing you have to again understand is that in this horoscope, while this particular one is the house number 1, the sign is that of 4, which is Cancer. Okay. So don't confuse between sign numbers and the house numbers. This is the house and this is the sign. And at this time, what was rising was Mercury as well as Sun. They both were rising at 5 a.m. When you look at it from Chicago, Illinois, on the eastern horizon. And this is what is the ascendant. So once this is the ascendant, everything becomes actually anti-clockwise. The next sign is that of a Leo, and then you have Virgo, then you have Libra, then you have Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries, and then Taurus and Gemini. So this is actually house number 1. This is house number 2, house number 3, house number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay. That's how you have to look at a horoscope. Okay. So don't be confused between the numbers and the houses. I particularly took a horoscope where the rising sign is different than one, so that you know the difference between house and signs. Okay. So if I ask a question, what is the sign in house number 11? What you essentially need to do is, this is house number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's Taurus. Okay. That's what is the sign here. So if you just apply some of the basics, right, of what we learned this far, right, that there is a that Mercury and Sun, this is the ascendant, right? The way to analyze the ascendant is that you have to look at the ascendant and see what are the grahas, right, that are influencing this particular ascendant. Okay. The grahas that are influencing are Mercury and Sun, right? So at this point, you do not have too many tools with you because you have not done too much of studies, but at least from on a basic surface, you know that you can at least very much see that, hey, is for who owns this sign, right? The owner of this sign is Cancer. The sign itself is Cancer. The Lord of Cancer, is Moon, from what we saw earlier, right? And you also know that Sun and Moon belong to the same group, like we saw before, right? So here you know that Sun is in a very friendly house. So now you're slowly thinking that, okay, although Sun is considered as a kruda graha and all those things, but you know what, Sun is in a friendly house, so it will reflect some of the good karmas from the signification of the Sun itself. Okay, that means there is an element of royalty in this person. There is an element, good element of ego in this person, and things of that nature. By appearance also, this person may be somewhat, I would say, uh, a little brilliant in looking, but you have to look at the other influences also before you come to that conclusion. Okay, so you have to lay down some of those features of each graha and put that, mix that with the person, like buddhi. Mercury we saw is buddhi, right? You should see that. And there are other aspects also which we have not discussed, but just take scratching the surface. What you're doing is just scratching the surface, right? You can say that this person is could have a good buddhi, or a fairly intelligent person, because there is also another combination I'm seeing here which we have not delved into, which is in the yoga, which is known as the Buddha Aditya Yoga, which is right in the ascendant. So you've already started forming. Okay, and like you will also know that each graha has got various other significations, like being tall, being short, and all those things. Those will also come into play. You will slowly start forming this person. And one of the signification of the first house is also how street smart the person is, etc., right? So you will know that this person is a fairly intelligent guy. You already started making some of the conclusions about what this person is. It's not really a conclusion, but more like a derivation of what this person would be, right? So those positivities are coming out in the first, and then you go to the second house and you analyze the second house, and you see, how it is, how are things with relation to his family, his ability to make his own income, etc., etc. All those significations of the second house you bring in here. Okay, and how the lord of this house is placed here. The lord of Leo is Sun, is placed very well, in the first house. But then, as you're analyzing this lagna, you have to look at something that we did not discuss, as what are the things that are really aspecting that lagna or looking at that lagna, right? So one of the things we are seeing here is Saturn, from the seventh house. Is It's got an aspect on the lagna, right? So there is not just influence of Sun and Mercury, but there is a very heavy influence of Saturn. Now you're coming to another, I would say, a contrast, right? So first you spoke a lot of uh, you know good aspects about this, positive aspects. Now you have to bring some of the things, Saturnian aspects, into the lagna. So the Saturnian aspects are now pouring into the nature of this person, right? So that is how you analyze each house and slowly come to a conclusion about, what this person is about. You for example, if you look at Venus, fourth house, right? Fourth house is about sukha, happiness. It's about mother. It's about proper. It's about, a kind of, I would say, the traditional inherent properties, etc. So those are the real estate. Those are fourth house significations. Even your college education also is also reflected by fourth house. So in this, when you look at this, I'll do a simple analysis. The Lord, The number 7 denotes actually Libra. And we know from our table of lordship that Libra is owned by Venus. Venus is the lord of Libra, right? So you also know this is the fourth house. So, fourth house lord is now located in here. What is this house? This is the 12th house. Okay. And we know that the key signification of the 12th house is loss, is isolation, hospitalization, etc. Those are some of the key significations of the 12th house. So you know that whatever are the good significations of the fourth house, you know, this person has a tendency to lose them, right? That's how you analyze, you know. So whether it is property or whether it is happiness or even mother for that instance, right? There could be trouble actually, I would say, in those areas. So you know immediately from the looking at the signification, you know, although this person is smart, intelligent, and all that, but he does have a lot of, you know, Saturnian qualities too in him. However, when it comes to the significations like his college studies or his you know mother aspects, and one of the other aspects of fourth house is about conveyance, vehicles, etc. Which, you know, those things, you know, there may be losses concerning them in his life. Okay, those, again, whatever analysis now we are doing, right? What we are doing is the static analysis. Okay, that's very important to understand, because when those things will happen, we'll come to the dynamic part of it, right? So this is how you analyze this house. Uh, Now you come to the fifth house, about progeny, right? About in general inclination of mind, etc. Right? You see that the lord of number 8 is actually Scorpio, and the lord of Scorpio is Mars. And Mars, you should see where it is located. It is located in the ninth house. And you know that this ninth house, when you look at the significations of the ninth house, it is supposed to be a very auspicious house, this ninth house, right? It's about fortune, about all the good things in life. So now you can also say that, you know what, at least on a primary level, you can say all the significations that we learned of the fifth house will be positive in this person's life. Okay, because it's in a very positive house. And also you can say that it is also uh, uh, in combination with moon, which happens to be the lord of the ascendant. So these are all like a very excellent combination for many things in life, like fortune and also the fifth houses. But the deeper analysis will show some other things also, because they are so close to each other. um, but what I'm telling here is just a fundamental way of analyzing a horoscope. So again, the moment you say that, hey, something is good or something is bad, you know, don't come to that conclusion, but lay that down. You know, this is what is this particular aspect. Now, what we are doing is essentially bhava vichara, right? We did the lagna vichara. We are doing the bhava vichara. Each house we are going and seeing what they are, right, and trying to analyze. When you come to the sixth house, you know that the sixth house is a house of illness. It's a house of enmity and all those things, right? So here you're seeing that you know there is Ketu, which is a malefic, and there is Jupiter, which is retrograde in nature. And then you have a particular aspect of Venus also in this. But also the sixth lord itself is Jupiter. So it is housed here. So one of the things you can say that, hey, the lord of the house itself is in the house. So the lord will generally protect the house that it owns. So you can draw some conclusions about safety of the sixth house. However, you also know that there are combinations of certain grahas which are not favorable. Okay, so now you are coming to a different dimension of analysis, right? Each house, as I said, they have different aspects. There are material aspects, and then there are non-material aspects such as your health, etc. Especially when you come to sixth house, right? Very important to analyze from health perspective also. So although this person has a lot of very other good fortune, there is indication of a lot of troubled health. You know, that is something that you can get into more detail when you do the health analysis. Similarly, the seventh house. Now, seventh house in this particular horoscope is of great significance because a the lord of the seventh house, which is actually, this is number 10 sign, is that of Capricorn. And we know from our previous analysis that the lord of Capricorn is actually Saturn, right? Saturn is posited in this house, and Saturn is the lord. And this is where you say, okay, let me analyze now all kinds of spousal relationship, partnerships, etc., right? Although Saturn is the lord of the house and it will protect the house to a great extent, however, it's got a great deal of maleficence in it. Okay, so one needs to take a very close analysis of how Saturn is posited in various other divisional charts. That's where your, Amsa Vichara comes into play. And then see how the seventh house is activated, because there could be a lot of positives, but at the same time you can also look that the marital aspects may or may not be that favorable in this horoscope. More likely not, actually, with these kind of positions, but you have to do that kind of an analysis. Same thing with the eighth house, and then you come to the ninth house. Ninth house is the house of fortune. And then you go to the 10th house, everything about career. You can analyze where the lord is positioned. The lord is positioned actually Aries, right? Number one is Aries. The lord of Aries is Mars. Mars is very well positioned in the ninth house, and Mars is also in combination with in the ascendant lord, which is Moon. So you know that this person, career wise, may have a very good career, but at the same time you can also get into the types of career this person may be engaged by looking at various significations of both Moon as well as Mars, which kind of dictate where you're leaning from your skill sets perspective, your inclination perspective, and your actual job occupation perspective, right? And then you go to the 11th house and you analyze the whether this person will get easy gains, whether this person will get money easily and things of that nature, whether will he will have a good company, social relationships. However, here you know that the 11th lord is actually positioned in the 12th house, right? Which means that the themes of the 11th house now are, getting lost because the Lord is in the 12th house. But you have to see whether there are other aspects to this 11th house. And finally, you get to the 12th house where you know that there are, certain grahas now posited in this house, and those themes will also come out. Okay, so this is how you do a very simple static analysis. Now the strengths of this person lie here. There are some weaknesses lying here, here, as well as here, right? And then again, strengths in these areas, these houses. So the themes of these houses bring positivity, 1, 10, as well as 9, whereas as well as 5, excellent themes. Whereas the themes from the 12th and the 6th, as well as the 4th, uh, even the seventh to some extent, those will be the contrast, right? So that is how you analyze that. Now this is what is the static analysis. Okay, once you come to the static analysis, now you kind of know the person, you kind of know the nature of the person, and now you have to bring in the dynamic analysis. The dynamic analysis, I'm not going into the details, obviously, because this is just a seminar. uh, the dynamic analysis is where you go into the dasha vichara, where you will know which is the graha which is predominantly playing a role. Okay, for example, if this person, okay, I'm not taking the actual dasha. But even if you take actual dasha, let us say the first dasha is Mercury, right? Which spans for the first 17 years, right? All the aspects of that will come into play. All the aspects of Mercury in this particular uh, you know chart is the lord of the 12th as well as the 6th, right? So there are a lot of, sorry, 12th and the third house, right? So Mercury can bring in, depending upon how it is positioned. Right now, it is positioned very well, and the yoga aspects that I told you, like the Buddhaditya yoga and all those, the intellectual aspects, they will all come in quite positively in this horoscope during the Mercury dasha. Okay, but and also the house, the themes of the third house as well as the 12th house will start showing up, as the person grows. But when you're in a childhood, there is a lot of those themes which may not hold that much of significance. However, they will come up. Okay, you will definitely know that this person will have, a kind of a troubled health early stages of life. That's because of the themes of the 12th house is coming. And also, I haven't explained the aspects, but there is a sixth aspect to the 12th house, which is kind of coming into play there. So those troubles will come. But from the intellectual perspective, from education perspective, the schooling, etc., will be excellent for this child, you can say, because the third house also signifies your primary school. And this is a very good combination here. Okay, plus there is a very good combination of the ascendant itself. So make sure that when you're analyzing, right, the positivities of the horoscope should be in the forefront always, because we tend to go more on the negative side of things, right? But positivities should be in the forefront, because ultimately the study of astrology, the primary objective should be use it as a tool for positive counseling. That's what is very very important. Okay, while you may be seeing the negativities, which are also true, but the it can always be neutralized by positivities which you are not seeing sometimes. Okay, so that is very very important in life. Positivity is much much more important than the negativities in life, and that should be always in the forefront. Okay, this is a very important aspect of analyzing a horoscope. Okay, so this is how you do a fundamental analysis. Then you bring in the dynamic analysis. Of course, I didn't talk about gochara and other things. Even nakshatra I have not spoken about. But when you bring in all those themes, what happens is that you will be able to effectively analyze, and then you can say that this is what will be the trend at this particular period of time. Okay, and more often than not, you will see that people who want their horoscopes to be analyzed, there are certain aspects of the horoscope which are very very important to them, depending upon what stage of life they are, right? So focus on those aspects rather than going into every single aspect of the horoscope, right? For example, if somebody is coming to you in their early 20s, right? They're in their early 20s, let's say between 25 and 35, right? I think majority of their concern would be about relationships as well as career, which is very important. So focus on those areas, right? So when you come to relationship, it is the seventh house. Focus on this. What is the seventh house reflecting? What is the 10th house reflecting, etc.? Okay, so there is a ignore this particular actually acronym GK. It's a form of a graha called Gulika, but don't worry about that. But other grahas you should be very clear. Me is Mercury, Su is Sun, Sa is Saturn, Ju is Jupiter, Ma is Mars, Mo is Moon, and Ra is Rahu, and K is Ketu. Those are the seven. As here is the ascendant. Ascendant is represented by the first house. Okay, so this is a kind of a roundup. I just wanted to give you a random example and show you, rather than taking a specific example. so that we can have a natural way of analyzing a horoscope. Okay, this is how you analyze a horoscope. And finally, I want to talk about some do's and don'ts of a Jyotish, right? If you're an aspiring astrologer, these are certainly certain do's and don'ts. As a Jyotish, it should, obviously one needs to be, these are a very traditional way that has been given to us as to what a Jyotish should be. They should be pure, modest, honest, witty. It's very important, right? To be part of the society is very important. Pure in speech, eloquent, not timid in assemblies. You have to be very um, expressive, I would say, proficient in the theory of practice and all the three branches. The Ganita, which is mathematics, Phalita, and Samhita. Those are different, aspects of horoscopic reading. Then able to reconcile the difference of opinions among various classical texts. That's also very important, because as you're reading, you'll find that the more you start reading, you'll find more contradictions sometimes, right? But that is where your ability to analyze comes into play, and layer them very nicely, and look for more confluence than contradiction. Okay, that confluence aspect is much more important than contradictions. So, or convert those contradictions into confluence. Okay, that's very important. And a Jyotish is not one who is sorry, spirit possession, all those things. This voodoo stuff has got nothing to do with Jyotisham. Okay, don't get into those things. People prescribing you very expensive remedies are not part of Jyotisham. They are not prescribed anywhere. There are remedies, but those remedies are simple in nature. They are esoteric sometimes in nature, but they are very simple to perform. So don't get into any kind of an expensive remedical measures. Okay, but there are remedies prescribed in Jyotish shastras, depending upon how your karmas are. Essentially, karmas can be of three different gradients. Okay, there is a drida karma, there is a drida karma, and adrida karma. Okay, so think of it like potholes while you're driving a car. Okay, so drida karma is a karma that you have to go through no matter what. Okay, drida karmas, or karmas that to a great extent can be dented, I would say, with a combination of good judgment as well as some esoteric means. Whereas adrida karmas, or karmas that you can neutralize even by sound judgment. So when you consult the astrologer will give you directions based on what is the drida karma and what's an adrida karma, etc. Right? So those are also very important. What a Jyotish is not. Okay, you should not be assuming without the knowledge of the science. Please don't start reading. Just by reading a couple of books, don't say, according to my reading, this is happening, that is happening, because that can sometimes be very perilous. Like, it may sound as though it's, you're rightfully predicting, but it can be sometimes disastrous. Do it in a very methodical way, do it in a clean way. Okay. So that the status of a Jyotish is very high in a society, because, as I mentioned before, this is a very powerful tool, should be used as a tool for positive counseling. Okay, that is very, very, very important. Okay, now I will open up to questions uh, before we do this prayer, so that we can talk a little bit. I've been talking at a stretch, so let me get to the chat. Hold on. Let me get to the gallery view. Okay. All right. I'm seeing some chat here, and if you have any questions, you should post here. Uh, Patricia. I'm going to actually unmute everybody very shortly. Uh, okay, unmute. Let me just stop share. Okay, and all the participants are here. Let me go to the participants and okay, I think you can unmute yourself at this point of time. Please unmute yourself. Devji, you can unmute yourself.
There's nobody in the world that can mute me, you know that.
Okay, unmute yourself. Erica, you can unmute yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, it was excellent, Murliji, Jyotish.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
As,
Devji.
as a last name, having me as a Joshi as my last name, I have to learn something about Jyotish. So
Absolutely.
I thought
Absolutely.
this was a good seminar for me. So now I can say I know a little bit about being Joshi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Suresh Babu?
Clear.
Yeah, others can also please unmute. Patricia, you can unmute yourself. Mona, I think you can unmute. Jayantika, you can unmute yourself. And who
Oh,
else?
nice by the beach.
Satish, you can unmute yourself. Let me just try to make sure that everybody's. Tanya, you can unmute yourself if you want. Yeah, I think most everybody is now unmuted. I would like to get your feedback on how the sessions were, and if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to address them. Was the presentation visible, etc., and I was completely audible through the session, I hope?
Yes, you.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
you are.
Okay, great.
Will you be answering the questions from the chat?
Yeah, sure. What I'm afraid there's a problem in the microphone. Okay, Deepa is asking, is free will the same as agami karma? Good question, Deepa. So I would say that whatever you're performing, right, in this janma, right, so that comes as agami karma. Free will is the intellect part of it, right? So based on the trends of destiny or whatever, right? Whatever actions that you take in the free will, that will translate into agami karma. Whatever actions that you take. Good question.
What if you don't have any planets in a particular house? Like there's no aspects, it's blank. I know you had a lot of them just for your presentation, but there is times when you're analyzing someone's chart that they don't have anything. Does that mean there's no aspect in their life in regards to that house, positive or negative?
Yeah, good question again. So when you look at a chart, obviously there are 12 houses, right? And there are 9 grahas, right? So these 9 grahas can be spread in various ways. And more likely than not, some of the grahas are concentrated in certain house. There is no way all the 12 houses will be filled, right? So if some house doesn't have a graha, it doesn't mean that there is nothing going on in that house. There may be a lot going on because you have to bring in other elements into play. Okay. So, for example, let us say there are no grahas in the first house itself, ascendant itself, right? But you see Mars in the 10th house. Now, when we do the analysis, Mars has got some special aspects, like the 4th aspect, 7th aspect, and the 10th aspect. So it always aspects the 4th house from itself. So Mars is actually aspecting ascendant, but there is no graha in the ascendant. Okay. Sometimes it may happen that there is no aspect also. Still, you have to look at the Lord of that particular
Yeah.
and see where that is located. Okay, that is one aspect, the whole element of the whole analysis. Then what you need to do is you have to go and look at that Lord in various divisional charts that I spoke to you, Amsavichara. So that's how you derive. Did that answer your question, Tanya?
Can I ask you two questions, please?
Sure.
Yeah, the first question is, you know, the nakshatras, how much are they affecting every single uh every single aspect in the chart? So if say for example, you know, you look at the lagna and then you check the nakshatra, how much is that affecting things? And should we be checking the nakshatra of every single planet, for example?
Yes. The answer
Right.
to that question is absolutely. So when I
Okay.
when I when I when I said analysis, right? The seven types of analysis that I mentioned, one of the analysis was nakshatra analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you do analysis, do all the seven, not just a combination of them. All of them you have
Yeah.
to do for a particular thing. So nakshatra analysis is very, very important.
Okay. Also, if we want to continue studying, because I'm a beginner, what do you suggest we do next? What do we do?
Yes, absolutely. I think I have to share my screen for that. Uh, so, so I am going to actually continue this journey, and I'm going to begin a beginner's class. Actually, it's going to be 10-week sessions beginning September 20th, of 2 hours each. I'll go through the topics, that we went through today. I'm going to go through each of them in a very thorough way. It will be a combination of the concepts of astrology, where also analyzing real horoscopes. So
Mm-hmm.
it'll go into the introduction, the basics of astronomy, elements of horoscopes that we saw. Now here I'll delve into the details of each of them, and then analyze the horoscope, all the seven, how you do it, each of them, and then practical astrology also. There will be a lot of combination of both sample charts as well as other charts.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes, thank you.
you're most welcome. Any?
Jyotish,
Yes, Devji.
I have a question. Like people ask you the moment the exact time of your birth, so that they can analyze, which Rashi you were born in and what that has had some action on your future. If you don't know what time you were born, I was born in a village, so I don't know. How do you figure that out?
Yeah, very good question, and I do get this sometimes. So in our shastras, they have also given a very detailed methodology of the time of birth, right? That's the main issue
Right.
many of the time. The time of birth, there is a way to rectify that. Okay, it's a very detailed methodology, and there are various events in life that you bring into focus to really determine the time of the birth, and that can certainly be done, uh, but it involves a lot of analysis and derivations, and it's not simple in nature to tell you
But
to
if you
tell
don't
you
know the time of your birth, then what do you do?
That's what I'm telling you. If you don't know the time of the birth, you can derive the time of the birth by that methodology. So even if you know the time but you're not sure, still you can do it. Okay. So there is a methodology given in the scriptures to do that.
Okay.
What about the coordinates of the place where you were born?
Yeah, so the latitude and longitude, generally, if you know the town where you were born, the latitude and longitude are known by that. And that is derived by, nowadays it's derived by the computers very accurately. And you can even do it outside the computer with your hand if you have enough knowledge of, mathematics, Ganita, as well as astronomy.
No, I mean, how accurate the
Yeah, those are fairly accurate, I would say. Uh, from my experience so far, they are pretty accurate.
Uh, do people born under the same uh, uh, coordinates, same date, same time, do they have this similar fate?
Yeah, so here's where the Sanchita Karma comes into play. And this particular question has also been dealt with Parashara in detail in his text. Okay. So this is, let's say, the case of twins, right? Mostly, right?
Yeah.
So this is where the Amsa Vichara also comes into play very, very importantly, right? So for twins, the ascendant is taken as a person, the child born first, okay, and since the third house is that of the immediate sibling, that is taken as an ascendant for the second child, okay. The other aspect is that even within twins, generally there is a small difference, okay, of birth time, okay, and which is reflected in the Amsa Vicharas very clearly. So many times you can see that both are identical and very different. So that is how you do the analysis of twins. So there is a question here. What is the difference between analyzing the horoscope of a born person versus events like COVID-19? Madhu has asked this question. So what is the difference between, it's a very good question. Uh, the question is, what is the difference between analyzing a horoscope of a person versus events like COVID-19? Okay. So that is what the analysis of a person, which is the hora, is that of an individual. Okay. That is a one particular branch of astrology. Whereas events such as COVID-19 and election results and all those, that is what we refer to in as mundane astrology. Mundane astrology is astrology of events, global events of nature.
Mm.
Thank you very much, sir. This is Madhu.
Can
You're
I ask
welcome.
another question, please?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. I had a chart done, a computer chart done, which was sent to me recently, and then I had another one done, and all the planets are in completely different places. The signs are different, the planets are different. I think one chart looks like this. It's a square chart like this, and the other one is like the one you showed us.
Okay. All right.
Why is it that I mean, like
Good.
even here, my Lagna is Capricorn, right? But it's not in your chart. It's Sagittarius. My Lagna is Sagittarius. Why is
Okay.
it so different?
Yeah. Good question again. See, what happens is earlier I told you, right? There are different ways of representing a chart.
Yeah.
So the square chart that you're seeing is a South Indian type, okay?
Ah, okay.
And the one that you saw, the diamond that I showed you, that's a North Indian type, okay?
Yeah.
So it may appear as though they are in different places, but they are not actually in different places. Because in the South
Oh.
Indian chart, what happens is the signs remain constant, you know, and the houses keep changing. Whereas in the North Indian chart, the houses remain constant and the signs keep changing. So the representation is the same. So don't get confused with that. if with the given data, it will be the same, and I can, if you want,
Really?
yeah, I can just cross validate that for you offline. If
Oh,
you,
thank you, because it's so confusing. I really thought I was a Sagittarius Lagna
yeah,
one chart, and here it says I'm not.
no,
I
if
don't get it.
yeah, I understand that. So yeah, stick to one format as much as possible.
Which is the best one to stick to?
Uh, I mean, I'm proficient with both South and North Indian, but to me, I from my students mostly I understood that they like North Indian because it's more intuitive. You know,
Right.
looking
Yeah.
when you look at opposite houses, they are really opposite. They are not
Yeah.
diagonally opposite, right?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, go with that till you
Go with
become
Southern.
proficient. Yeah,
I mean, Northern, I mean. Go with
yeah,
Northern. Okay. Thank you.
sure.
Is there one that's more ancient or more original between them?
Uh, well, the fact of the matter is that, if you go to the original Sanskrit way of doing, South Indian was a little bit more ancient, actually, and then the derivations came later on. You know, how to represent it, right? How you can, in fact, the original representation was in a very circular fashion, right? But over a period of time, people made it more convenient as to how it is important for them to visually look at, to analyze.
Can I
But
ask a question,
but
sir?
but again, one thing to really understand is that the representation is not important. It is the
Mm-hmm.
analysis which is important.
Mm-hmm.
Guruji, can I please ask a question?
Please, please.
Okay, suppose as you rightly said, the nakshatra is say Puyam and the Rasi becomes Kadaga.
Right.
But as per the date of birth, it becomes Virgo. Something like the other
Yeah,
person
right,
asked.
right. So, yeah, again, a very good question. I would say that this is where you have to demarcate between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. Western astrology follows the solar pattern, right? That within the period, as long as sun remains in a particular rashi, they
Yeah.
consider that as the rashi. Okay. Whereas Vedic astrology is very micro in nature. Okay, your your ascendant and lagna and everything can change every couple of hours, but that doesn't mean that your position of sun or anything is changing. Okay,
But in South India, where your moon is there, that is Rashi.
that in India, in generally we consider that as the rashi. Okay,
Yeah.
so I would say that Parashara, okay, he has given a very clear indication of what should be considered when you analyze a horoscope. Okay, he says the first thing that needs to be considered is the lagna. Okay, lagna is the first thing that needs to be considered, and then from lagna you look at everything else. Okay, then he says the second thing you should consider is the position of the moon. Okay, that is what we look at as rashi, right? From that, then he says the third you should consider is position of the sun. Okay, so when you analyze it from all the three ways. In some horoscopes, the ascendant, the moon, and the sun, they're all on the same house, in which case, your analysis is only from the ascendant. Okay, that is also
Fine.
sometimes we refer to as sudarshana lagna, which means that all of them are posited in the same house.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
In the example horoscope, you wrote GK. What does it mean, GK?
Yeah, as I mentioned, before, I needed everybody to ignore that. It is actually Gulika. Okay,
Okay.
Gulika is
Saturn,
also
Sun.
Saturn's sun, exactly,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I use that a lot, especially in the medical aspect of the astrology,
Okay.
medical analysis. I forgot to take that out in the screenshot, but good question though. But I didn't want you to get confused that it's a graha of its own.
Thank you.
Any other
How
question?
long have you been practicing this?
So I have been now practicing, as I mentioned, I received this Vidya from Arshavidya Gurukulam, and it's about 15 years since then I've been practicing. But again, I have to emphasize one thing, that you never every time, every year, every step in the journey is learning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you mastered this or of any sort. You always learn, because uh, it's a super science where which in traditional days, you were supposed to devote 12 years, 100% devotion to the study, to even you know come to come anywhere close to proficient in the subject. So I consider this journey as a learning for everybody, including myself.
Keep it going. Good job. I have a question.
Yes, Devji.
The the way you analyze the personality of a person versus to analyze a situation like a COVID type of thing. What are the different aspects that you learn, you would analyze, so that you can conclude what's going to happen in the future?
Excellent question. So, as I mentioned before, these are two different kind of branches of astrology. One is really analyzing the person, which we call the Hora Shastra. And then there is a mundane astrology. Mundane astrology is essentially knowing the effects of various grahas on the overall
Whole earth.
globe, right? And different parts of the globe, and then different nations and different countries, right? Then we go to an extent of, let's say, you take a country, right? For example, you take India or
What he
US,
taught me, no?
right?
He taught that at a very
How
fast pace.
how 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 these affect, you know, the entire globe is studied in a very different way. That's mundane astrology,
Oh, okay.
तो मैंने गिरा
right?
आपके
Now the
लंदन
third
से
part of
वो
all
क्या
this is,
वो है
let me just
then
1%. Okay. So the third part of this, Devji, is that you have to bring these two together. Okay. The mundane astrology and the individual astrology. That's what I've given in my website. It's more important to know, how this COVID is affecting me, as opposed to, when will this COVID end? Yeah, that's a very valid question. But at the same time, you have to bring that into play. So people ask me, who is going to win, right? The elections. Now, that is not as important as it is how is it going to affect me, right? That is what is important. So in astrology, don't be curious. I would say use that as a tool for improving your own, life. That's very important.
The Indian astrology is, so logical that it is possible to put this into a computer system. And I know that there are many things available. So how accurate they are? Has it been possible to completely, bring in all logic to be able to?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Actually, the logic that is brought in the computer is the mathematics aspect of it, the calculations aspect of it. Okay. What are the degrees of each planet, how closely they are located, the positions, etc. Okay. That is what the computer does. The interpretation of what it could be, you know yes, there are a lot of people who have put in computer those things, but they cannot come that close as to your own application of them by doing a systematic vichara. Okay. That systematic vichara needs to be done by you as an individual, knowing the other person's individual, and knowing the other person's even sanchita karmas and prarabdha karmas. So I would say that that part is probably not replaceable by computer, at least as of yet. So the accuracy levels for calculations in the computer are 100%. Okay, the when I said the degrees and all those, they're very very accurate, very close to 100%. But the interpretation of it, I have not found it that much, because then they become standardized to all individuals.
So would you say that at least we can rely on the charts produced by to write modules?
Yeah, given the data, you can rely on the accuracy of the formation of the chart.
Yeah.
That is more reliable than before when it was done by hand, because now you can calculate to the minute, how close the planets are, etc.
Only when you
Sureshji, huh?
compare horoscopes of a man and a woman with the intention of forming a marriage alliance, what specifically are you looking for? And when they say they agree with 30 gunas or 32 gunas, what does it mean?
Yeah, actually, the compatibility analysis is a very deep analysis. Okay, on a broader side, I mentioned the seventh house, right? That is all the house of spouse, your partnership, etc. Right? First of all, one needs to do a thorough analysis of that particular seventh house in both the horoscopes. Okay, then you come to the various aspects. It's a very deep analysis, right? You look at the passion combinations between both the horoscopes. Okay, how one person is intentionally, because when you look at the marriage, right, so there is it's a combination of karma and vasana. Okay, it's which is passion, right? So in an ideal relationship, what you're looking for is a balance between these two. Sometimes it happens, or many times it happens, that there is a complete imbalance between this vasana and karma, right? So you will see that couples are together. However, they probably are not really that attached, but yet they are together. There is no issues, there are no problems of any nature, but then they are, they live as two individuals. On the other hand, you can see that couples are very very passionate, but their marital harmony is not there. you know there is always conflicts of nature. Then you find that there are people who are also affectionate together, and at the same time, long life partnership. So that's where is the balance between vasana and karma. When karma is too skewed, right, vasana is less, the longevity of the relationship will be there, but it will not be intimate. If the vasana is too huge and karma is very less, it will be more of a fatal attraction kind of a thing, right? So what you do is you do each of the grahas. There are standard analysis of Ashtakuta Guna and all those things, but there are other passion combinations that you have to do very deep analysis. You know how they are positioned. Simple example is like Venus represents spouse. One of the significations of Venus is that, right? So how is Venus positioned in his horoscope versus her horoscope? That needs to be very clearly seen. And then there are other aspects too. When everything is doing combined very well, okay, and it's compatible, you also have to look, as an astrologer, you also have to look whether there is what is there any longevity issues in either of the houses. Okay, so while you don't see longevity that frequently, however, you have to see it in a very broad way. Okay, there is something called madhya ayu, there is something called purna ayu. At least those things should be in place. Okay, because if there is an excellent horoscope, and if you're really seeing that the ayu is very very less, then you don't put it in the compatible category, although they may be very compatible in other aspects. So the short answer is that it is not a simple compatibility analysis. There is a very thorough analysis that needs to be done in both the horoscopes.
I understand that, but when they say gunas in aspect, what does it mean? I mean, what's the maximum number of gunas that you can uh, have compatibility with?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling. That compatibility guna, generally there is a 36-point allotment we give, right? So the cutoff point is 22 and above is where you see progression, right? If you have something close to 26, 27 and all, it is really excellent. I would say very good. I would say 25 and above. But then my point here is that that is only one aspect of that compatibility analysis. You have to look at other aspects which are not given in those ashtakoda gunas.
When what is the significance or effectiveness of pariharas or purifications? When everything is cast in stone, as far as your birth chart is concerned, how effective they are?
Yeah, very good question, Acharya. About remedies, I actually briefly spoke earlier in the seminar. Um, See, uh, I told you there are three gradations of karmas, right? Dhrida karma, dhrida karma, and adhrida karma, right? If it is a dhrida karma, okay, the counseling should only be how to tackle that karma rather than rectify that karma. Okay, how to tackle, how to prepare yourself, right? It's a pothole that you have to go through, and how you should counsel for that is very important. The dhrida karma, there is there are remedial measures for that, which is a combination of certain esoteric measures as well as sound judgment that can be done to dent those karmas. Okay, whereas the adrida karmas or karmas that can be counseled and overcome by good judgment itself. Okay, so those are the forms of remedy. So for that, what happens is that both for adrida karma, drida adrida karma as well as adrida karmas, remedies are given. Okay, in our scriptures. The important thing to understand is none of these remedies are huge and expensive in nature. Unfortunately, it has those remedical aspects have been sometimes, I would say, misused, but most of those remedies are very simple in nature. The most demanding thing of those remedies are dedication and sincerity and doing by yourself. That is more important. Many times they say, oh, can I do it for somebody else? No, it doesn't happen that way. Right? That person has to do, and then the effect takes place. Yes, if you do it, it's not that it will harm that other person, but it will not affect that person. So the short answer is yes, remedies are there, but they are simple in nature. When it comes to stones, gemstones, etc., they are also effective, but you have to be very, very, very careful with gemstones. Okay, not wearing a gemstone will not have any effect in you, but wearing a wrong gemstone will certainly have a negative impact. So be extremely careful, in choosing the gemstone as well as the metal that you're wearing on your body. It should be very auspicious in nature, in context to your horoscope. you know for example, Jupiter represents topaz, yellow topaz. It doesn't mean that everybody wears yellow topaz because Jupiter is a benefit. In some horoscopes, Jupiter may actually represent something extremely malefic to your health, and the effects could be very different. So
How
contextualize the
to
horoscope, seek proper advice, and then wear the gemstone.
graha pariharas,
Sorry.
graha pariharas, they require chanting of mantras.
Yeah, those are the esoteric. Yeah, so there are something called bija mantras, right? Very, very powerful, very effective, very simple, also in nature. So those are very effective, I would say, esoteric remedies.
Thank you.
Welcome, Acharya. Good questions.
What do you think about Western astrology?
Western astrology,
Yeah.
I think I respect Western astrology as much as I respect Vedic astrology.
Hmm.
But they have a different approach.
Hmm.
I would say from a solar point of view. I
Hmm.
haven't gone very deep into Western astrology, so I cannot comment on it. However, that's another form of astrology. That's all I can say.
I now understand why my chart's so different in this computer, in this
Oh,
computer readout. Can you believe what I was told? This person who sent me this link is using Western astrology, tropical, for the
oh,
grahas, and he's using sidereal for
there you go.
everything else.
There you
How
go.
can you combine both? He says it's fine. I don't think it is. What do you think?
Yeah, I can certainly take a look offline,
He's
Tanya.
using both.
Yeah, it could. That's where probably is the difference.
That is the difference. I just realized he said so.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. I
Yeah.
don't get that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh my goodness.
When you're doing a reading for somebody, how, and let's say you predict like a career move or a relationship move, when you're getting those questions, because I know you said they're quite common, which makes sense. How can you tell if something is be like set in stone or
3
the
o'clock.
feel of another person's going to change? Like for example, if you
अरे मिस्टर मेरी वाली गैस बिल्कुल
job,
स्लो चल
if they're going to get this job, but then maybe something happens, like the COVID thing, as an example, and then that totally changes that.
I think there
Where
was
does
a lot
free
of
will and destiny come
there's
into
a
play?
Patricia, there's a lot of back noise, and I was not able to hear the question. Let me do one thing. Let me, for a short while, let me just mute everybody, and I'll unmute you. Um, yeah, Patricia, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay,
Yeah, okay. I'm able to hear you now. Go
thank
ahead,
you.
please. If you don't
So
mind, please repeat the question.
sure. So you know how you said when you're trying to do predictions for people like career or relationships, things like that, um, and you're looking at different aspects. If you predict something but it doesn't actually come out, where does that come into play between free will and destiny? Like say
Yeah.
you say someone's going to get a job and maybe they were supposed to get this job, but then something like COVID hits and that totally changes things, or a relationship. So things are supposed to happen, but then that other person's free will, they decide not to get into a relationship, and so then that kind of skews what you see for this person that you're reading. How does that come into play, like free will versus destiny in those different areas?
Yeah, excellent question. Again, one thing very important to understand is there is a mundane part of the astrology and there is individual part, right? So when you look at a chart and analyze the effect, you should also consider the effect of any mundane happenings that you are anticipating, because as an astrologer you're also anticipating mundane happenings around the globe, right? For example, last year in August and September, uh, we as astrologers, we spoke a lot about the crisis that may take place during the first quarter globally, and how it could potentially affect everybody. But then, that you keep at the mundane level. Now at that time when I'm looking at a horoscope, I should also be looking at, hey, these mundane happenings, is this going to affect this individual? That's very important, right? Is something like a COVID, is it going to affect this individual in this particular aspect of the question that is asking? That is where the thoroughness of the analysis comes into play. If I had ignored what's the mundane aspect of the astrology and just spoken about the individual, then it's a question of a chance, whether it comes true or not. But it has to align with everything. You know, I think it's a very good and pertinent question.
Right, but then let's say for a relationship, you don't, maybe someone's coming to you and then they don't know the other person's date of birth information and all that, but you see a relationship is coming in for them. But then what if that other person that you kind of see coming into their chart, maybe they make a life change or they change their mind on something, so it's their free will, and it kind of changes the destiny of the person that you're reading. How does that come into play, because you don't see the other aspects from the other side?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, when it comes to relationship, you can only see it from the point of view of the horoscope that you are looking at. This is the reason I always say that when people come to me with relationships, I can say from your point of view. From to tell from the other person's point of view, I need the other person's details also. To look at the horoscope like this, right? Whether it is going to gel or not gel, or how long it's going to last, or certain decisions may come into play, etc. So if the other person's details are not known, then it is looking at one side of the coin.
Right. So how can you predict, like, if someone's going to get into a relationship or not, and
Yeah,
when?
yeah. So I can predict that from the person whose chart I'm looking at. Okay, so what it will indicate is that this particular time this person is going to get into definitely a relationship, and it can also indicate that that relationship will culminate into something long term or not, right? However, when you get into a relationship, to really look at both the karmas, I do have to look at the other persons too. So the straight answer to your question is that just by looking at your individual horoscope, the astrologer cannot guarantee that you will not only get into this relationship, but you will be in a relationship for lifelong, unless he looks at the other
Ah,
relationship chart.
okay.
Yes,
Okay. That
yes.
makes perfect sense. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Any other questions? If there are any other questions, please unmute yourself. Acharya, you can unmute
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
So, there are temples dedicated to propitiations, pariharas. Are they significant because of their geographical coordinates, or is there something else? I would like to believe that it may be the geographical coordinates that make them important.
Yeah, it's a very actually deep question, because when you look at the Ganita aspect of astrology, right? Uh, it is simply mind-boggling. I would say that I would say some of the top-notch PhDs from Ivy Leagues would be, begging for more knowledge when they look at that aspect of Jyotisham. So my inclination is that when these temples and other locations, other monuments, I would say, were built, uh, they were certainly, the geographical coordinates were taken into consideration. Not only geographical coordinates, but also directional, as well as various other aspects were taken into consideration before they were built, and that's the signification. For example, if you look at the temples in Kumbakonam, right, which is one of its sort in the world, where each graha is dedicated a temple, is simply phenomenal, I would say. There are examples of there are various examples of how those things came into play. So, there's the 17th century musician that I spoke about earlier, right? One of his persons in the band, he had something in his stomach, uh, and they did not know what it was, right? And somebody said that Jupiter is actually located very poorly in the horoscope, and it signifies Jupiter. One of the signification of Jupiter is growth, so it's a growth of a tumor of some sort. So I think you should pray to Jupiter in Kumbakonam. So he recited that, and that person became all right. So then he made hymns of all the grahas actually there.
And there's
So
a fairly good concentration of these temples in and around Kumbakonam. I wonder
yes,
why so.
yeah, definitely that is the thing. So auspicious place, I would say. And ironically, a lot of people who horoscope that I've seen who are born in Kumbakonam happen to be, very highly.
very sharp.
Yeah,
Very sharp.
very sharp, right?
I would say intelligent, but very sharp.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely, that is a trend. Good question, Acharya. Any other question from anybody? You can unmute yourself and ask.
Does your slideshow exist on your website? Can we look at it again?
It doesn't, but I can certainly upload. Actually, I'm just opening up a YouTube channel, and I can upload in there too.
Yeah, please, because there were a lot of new terms, at least from my viewpoint, there were a lot of new terms which I don't understand, so I should take some time to understand them.
Certainly, I'll make it. I'll upload it on my website as well as in the YouTube channel.
Yes, the YouTube channel, that's going to be on your website.
That will also be on my website.
Okay.
I'll give the link of the YouTube channel on my website.
Okay.
So, Murli, you did touch upon the zodiac signs and the Indian, rashis. So, when you draw a horoscope, do you follow a different logic for the zodiacs based on zodiac sign and the charts based on the Indian, rashi falas?
I'm sorry, I lost you a little bit when you asked the question.
Do you look at horoscopes differently when they are drawn on the basis of zodiac signs, and also when they are drawn on the basis of Indian, birth signs?
Or
is there some kind of conversion happening?
Give me an example. I do not know how they are different.
Hey, Rashis, the birth stars.
Yeah. Yeah, they are the same actually. So, yeah, they are absolutely the same, So again, as I said, the representation may be a little bit different, but they're absolutely the same. Because when you do a Rashi chart, what you're telling is that I'm drawing it from where the moon is placed.
Yeah.
But the placement of the moon is there only even when you draw the actual chart. It doesn't change. Yeah.
The placement of sun is also
exactly.
proportional.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
About your course, when did you say it starts, and how do people enroll on it?
Yeah, I'll send the details of that. It is going to start on September 20th. It will be every Sunday for 2 hours each session, and it will go for 10 Sundays, weekends, and it will focus on the basics of astrology. And I'll send the details of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, if there are no more questions, I would like to conclude with the.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. I would like to actually just recite a small closing prayer before we conclude. Om Purnamada Purnamidham Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. So thank you very much, everybody, to have enthusiastically attended, stayed through the seminar, and please stay connected. Email me, WhatsApp me, whatever, if you have any questions about your horoscope or anything of that sort. Thanks again, and have a very, very good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much for creating.
Bye.
Thank you
so much.